Hey y'all, welcome back to another episode of Deathcore Reviews, and today we're going to step away from deathcore into something a little bit different, but still something super heavy all the same. A little context though. There's been a lot of really shitty things over the last couple of years, especially surrounding the pandemic. Like for a while you couldn't find toilet paper, I still can't find diet soda to save my fucking life. Thousands of people are dying on a daily, if not weekly basis. But we got some cool things. DoorDash drops food off at your door now. You don't have to deal with anybody. That's kind of cool. But what's also really cool is that we've seen a lot of projects from bands who may have already disbanded, or maybe alternate projects, side projects from people who are in bands that we all know and love. And the band that I'm going to talk about today is, it fits in that vein really nicely. The band's name is Take Life, and the album is called You Are Nowhere. It's coming out February 11th of this year, so just in, from the time of this recording, about a week. Take Life is actually an amalgam, or rather a side project from two band members who we know really well through their previous releases. Instrumentally, it's the work of Rafe Holmes, who we know from his guitar writing in a band called Insurgents, and then vocally, it's the product of Rob Frusco, who we know from One King Down and Most Precious Blood, who were two absolutely seminal hardcore and metallic hardcore acts from the late 90s into the 2000s. Take Life is very different from both of those bands, although if you listen close enough, you can really tell how each member brings their own influence and past experience into the project. In a word, You Are Nowhere is absolutely oppressive. It's dismal, gloomy, dreary, it's all of those things, but for 50 minutes it beats the shit out of you. It is metalcore to a T. It's ruthless, it's riff heavy, it's groovy, and the breakdowns just fucking slaughter. And when it isn't busy slaughtering you, it's just this suffocating, dense atmosphere that almost draws from things like Sludge and Funeral Doom in just a very minuscule amount to sort of round out that hardcore and metalcore dynamic. Instrumentally, throughout You Are Nowhere, 90% of the record is spent just bludgeoning you with dissonant guitars, just pummeling percussion, and like a thick grisly bass that kind of all just ties together into just a big fucking sledgehammer. It just wails you to death. But that's not all you get, because if that were all you get by the end of the 50-minute record, you'd be ready to blow your own brains out. It's so absolutely oppressive. There are moments of atmosphere, especially throughout even the opening song, Eucharistic Threat, and parts of Leper Shepherd, and even into the title track, You Are Nowhere, that sort of contrast that thorough oppression by bringing in elements of sort of a, I don't want to necessarily say melody, but definitely ethereality and atmosphere. What I mean by that is that you see a little bit of singing, which kind of helps lighten things up, but then you see a lot lighter work with the guitar, a lot of things that are less muddy and less grisly, and things that are just a little bit, if not sunny, maybe overcast in comparison. But that's only like 10% of the record. The remaining 90% is maybe more akin to some of what we saw in Insurgents. It's not quite as mathy, chaotic, or fast-paced, but it's definitely unpredictable. Even the opening song, Eucharistic Threat, really takes you on a journey throughout its 4-minute runtime, to a point where you can keep coming back to that song over and over again. I've been coming back to it over and over again for almost a month now, and I keep finding new things to love about it. Even things at first I wasn't necessarily the biggest fan of, I found myself really liking. Those things being, the clean vocal melodies and kind of scattered throughout the song, that really haunting chorus. And then even the way the song ends, it feels almost like you're listening to the end of an album, but when you look at the rest of the track list, you realize you're really only one track deep. So that's sort of the experience you get through You Are Nowhere from an instrumental standpoint. It's really a dialectic between thorough, crushing heaviness and then just very brief glimpses of something a little bit lighter to sort of spare your sanity in a sense. Vocally, I mean this in the best way possible as someone who's a huge fan of Most Precious Blood growing up. You could have told me this was anyone else and I would have believed you. There's no way that I would have known just by listening to this that this is the same person behind One King Down or Most Precious Blood. Here we see Frusco in kind of a new light, and it's been a while since we've really heard from him too. Voice feels a lot grittier, there's a lot more of experience and wear and tear behind it, and there's a lot more dynamism and range behind it too to really match the sort of peaks and valleys that the record takes you through. One of my favorite cuts from the record, besides the introductory track, which I think I've already kind of beaten to death, would be Anxiety Calligraphy, where we see a lot more of that range. And then towards the end, things like Wolf Eyes versus Machine Girl or Storm Ruler, again, you get to see more and more of that dynamism build up throughout the record, to a point where if you were to keep the same range and the same sort of cantankerous, just like hammering, if you were to keep that whole candor the entire release, you get tired of it really, really quickly, because it's a really long record in the grand scheme of things. But by the time that we start to get towards the end of the release, you see a lot more from Frusco that matches everything that Holmes is bringing to the table, so that the two of them working together really, really gives you sort of an evolving approach throughout the record that you can keep coming back to over and over again and finding new things to love. The flip side to that is that there are times where it feels like the record kind of lulls in its journey. The middle stretch can feel a little bit rough. A lot of the songs maybe blend together a little bit. It's a 51-minute long record, or something like that. What is it? Yeah, 51 minutes long, which means that you're bound to hit some flat spots, especially for a debut offering by this band. But with that said, you still get a lot of really, really, really good content. You get Frusco sounding maybe the best he's ever sounded. I don't know, it's hard because there's the whole nostalgia factor, but definitely one of the best offerings we've seen from him, period. And then you see a whole new side to Holmes. For those of you who were really, really a fan of Insurgents like I was, this is something totally different. It's slow, it's methodical, it's oppressive, it's crushing, it's everything that, well, Insurgents was also pretty heavy. So not that this is heavier, it's a different kind of heavy, and it's a different kind of heavy that I would never have expected from Holmes or from anyone who was involved with the Insurgents project. So if you're a fan of either of those bands, then it's definitely worth checking this out, because it's absolutely kind of continuing that same vein. If you've never heard of either of those bands, you should probably go listen to those bands, but this is entirely different. So even if you don't like them, you really, really, really should give Take Life a listen. Overall, I would give You Are Nowhere really a solid 8.5. I think there is a little bit of monotony to overcome. It's a long record, it's tough to get through, but if you do get through all of it, you're really going to be given a treat. And especially it's one of those records where if you can keep coming back to it and keep diving into it, even if it's a little bit of a tough nut to crack at first, you'll find some things to really, really love about it. So definitely worth checking out. It comes out February 11th. They're working with Blood Blast. Yeah, get to it.